And I'm super excited because I have David Bear, who I basically conned into doing this by kidnapping him at a networking event that I was at, and then seeing him again at a workshop. And he has been gracious enough to come on and sort of drop his knowledge. David has spent the last 2 decades, I found out, not 1 decade, but 2, immersed in the study of personal development and peak performance, neuroscience, psychology, and spirituality. And as an entrepreneur, David has built and sold successful businesses for the last 20 years. As founder and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce.com, he has helped tens of thousands of businesses master the mechanics and the strategies necessary to grow and scale their businesses beyond 7 figures. And as president of David Bear Coaching, David has mentored entrepreneurs, CEOs, professional athletes, and organizations on mental habits necessary to develop an invincible mindset. So kind of perfect for this interview series. So David, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Alex. It's my pleasure. And if there's anybody who I would like to get kidnapped by at a networking event, it would be.
Absolutely. So basically, we're just going to jump right into it and get some of the questions that some of the people have supplied us already, and then we'll release it. So first questions first, how did you know you were destined to be an entrepreneur in the first place?
Well, I think it occurred to me, I graduated from Columbia University in 1998, and I wanted to write screenplays. And I think it's actually part of my story, and what led me to do what I do now is that, like, that was my passion. But a career counselor in college told me that there was a 1 in a million chance that I could make a successful living, making movies. And at that time, I wasn't into personal development, and I didn't really understand the fact that other people would essentially, assert their beliefs on you, and then that becomes your life. So that was one that I adopted. But I was working at Nickelodeon as an assistant to the creative director there, and I just saw opportunities. I saw so many opportunities, so many problems, so many challenges, and the one that I picked up was the fact that it was really hard to get cool stuff for your dorm room at school. And so I said, well, it just kind of made sense that, you should be able to buy stuff on this thing called the internet, which had, just recently come out. And so I started my first business selling things to college kids for their dorm rooms. So posters, bean bags, lava lamps, inflatable furniture, glow-in-the-dark door beads.
Shut up.
And it was really from there on out that I started building my own businesses because, one, I think I was never a really good employee because I always thought that the way we were doing things didn't make any sense, just wasn't efficient. And 2, I really enjoyed the creative aspect of being an entrepreneur.
So cool. And I had no idea about the Nickelodeon thing. See, I always learn new things on these. These are awesome. So how long did it really take? Because obviously you've had a couple of different iterations of entrepreneurship and different businesses that you've done over the years. So how long did it take you to hit your first 6 figures or success?
So we had a 6-figure business with that business. It was a partner and I, but it wasn't a business. It was a business that didn't look like it was going to scale. And in hindsight, I can now see all the opportunities around that business that I didn't see then. And I got an opportunity to go to work in Italy. I was hired by an Italian motorcycle company, Ducati Motorcycles. I became very good friends with the guy who ran their U.S. division, and he liked what we were doing on the internet. He said, listen, we don't have an internet business. Why don't you come out, over to Italy and start Ducati.com? So I did. We sold the first motorcycle on the internet. It was this huge online success because of the power of their brand. So I, for years, I kind of fluctuated in and out of kind of doing my own thing or creating something for and with someone else. But my last company, which I started in 2005 that I still have, called DataBank Media, which owns ChamberofCommerce.com, one of our properties. That was the first time that I had built a 6 and then a 7-figure business successfully. And
that was all yours.
Yeah, and there's a big difference. Like, there's a different level of scale, right? So to get to 7 figures, you have to learn a few things and make some mistakes and learn from them to really figure out how you can get a business to that size. And then to 8 figures is something different, which I've had experience doing, not my own businesses, but with other organizations.
So cool. So then what do you feel then is basically the biggest action step that our viewers who are going to be thinking about either starting their own business or growing their businesses? What should they implement right now?
Well, I guess there's two things, right? And it's the reason why what I teach entrepreneurs is mindset and mechanics. So the first thing, which is foundational, is really starting to get to know your inner world, right? Your brain is a goal achieving machine. So if I looked at your life right now, I would be able to understand all the goals that your brain was achieving. Now, some of those goals you don't want, right? It's achieving things you don't want. It's achieving struggle. It's achieving businesses that don't work out. It's achieving relationships that don't work out. It's achieving not good enough. It's achieving money's hard to make. And so, in order to really create fluidly, in order to become a powerful creator, you have to really look at the unconscious decisions, the beliefs that you have, because those are the instructions for your goal achieving technology. And so what most entrepreneurs do is they have this really beautiful vision of their life, but if they really looked and got honest with themselves, what they believe about themselves, about money, about the particular business they're in, about customers, about the sales process, about online marketing, all the things that they believe about that are completely incongruent with what they're trying to create. And so they're giving instructions to their brain that's causing it to be a very difficult struggle, a long struggle, a process that includes a lot of suffering and stress and overwhelm. And so the first thing you have to do is master your mindset. Obviously, we don't have time to talk about how to fully master your mindset on this call. I could give a tip or two, but that's number one. The second thing is the mechanics of business. So that's going to vary depending on what type of business you're in. Like if you look at the expert business, for example, right? Coaches, consultants, trainers, people who have some form of knowledge that they want to offer into the world and make a profit off of and impact the world. What most people do is they become hypnotized by this idea of developing a scalable business, right? Scalability is one thing. The other thing is this idea of creating automated recurring revenue. So what most experts do is they move too quickly into scaling, some sort of scalability and some sort of like recurring, online revenue that you're making while you're on an island somewhere with your loved one, right? Now, that can all come, but the thing is that in order to actually do that effectively, you have to understand your target audience at an extraordinarily deep level, right? And so you have to work hands-on with people first. Like a lot of people, they try to bypass like one-on-one coaching. It's like, oh, it's not a good trade for time. It's like, no, it's not a good trade for time. I mean, unless you're charging, 50, 60, 70, $100,000 a year, which eventually you can do. It's what we charge our clients, right? For one-on-one coaching. But you got to get out there and do the $250 to $350 to $450 an hour work, because you're going to learn so much about your client. You're going to learn so many things about their pain points and what they want that you didn't know before. You're going to learn the language that they use to describe their problem. And you have to nail that. If someone's going to randomly click on a Facebook ad and they don't know you and go through some sort of funnel and spend $500 to $25,000 with you, like you have to nail that. So I guess my point is that start at the start line. Like don't start at the finish line. That's what most people want to do. And you can't win at that game.
No, I love that you just said that, because a lot of what I tell my clients is because a lot of them, whether they're coaches or even if they're selling something online or if they are opening a store or whatever it's going to be, we talk and they're like, well, we want to scale it. I'm like, okay, get your product first. Know what you're going to package. Let's make it pretty. Let's get the actual deliverables in line and measured out.
Absolutely.
And then you can do that. But without the product and without it having, so I'm so glad that somebody else said it and I didn't even have to pull it out of you. That's awesome. Okay, so this is not one of the normal questions, but because you went into it a little bit, I just want to ask you, how did you get from Ducati to mindset work?
So I think you've heard my story, at least part of it. I'm 41 at the time of this recording. And it's so funny with evergreen content. I'm like, I'm 41, but like, oh my God, next year if someone watches this, I'm not. But in 2016, I'm 41 years old. And but when I was
I'm editing that out, by the way, because you're never like they're gonna be like, he's 41 forever.
So forever. So when I was in my early 30s, a couple years after building the first business I told you about, DataBank, the one that we scaled to 7 figures, I had my early midlife crisis. So I was always stressed. I was always anxious. I was always overwhelmed. I fell for that idea that if I could just get my business to the next level, things would be better. Then I'd get my business to the next level. And it wasn't better. In fact, it was more complex and the problems were even bigger. And so I fell into drug and alcohol addiction. I started working a 12-step program. And I've always been like a puzzles and patterns and algorithm guy, which is why that business was based on search engine optimization. I was an early search engine optimization expert. I love the algorithms and figuring them out. What I saw in working a 12-step program and at about the same time starting to study Buddhism and then all the spiritual teachings and then becoming fascinated by the addicted brain and how the brain worked and neuroscience was I saw another algorithm. Right. At this time, it wasn't for hacking search engines. It was for really hacking your life, becoming a powerful creator, which is the promise of the spiritual teachings, but in a very grounded, practical way. Right. So that was my transition. I said, wow, there's something really powerful here. And I started to understand it. I started to apply it to my life. And then I started becoming very passionate about other people's suffering. Because what I saw was that, like, most entrepreneurs, most people in the world were suffering. We've become so used to it, we didn't even call it that anymore. I'm a little stressed. I'm a little anxious. I'm a little overwhelmed. And we become deceived by the fact that every once in a while, like, we have a beautiful moment. But the reality is that there's this underlying suffering that's taking place all the time for us. And so what I had learned gave me the ability to support people first in ending their suffering, and not really temporarily, but permanently, learning the tools, the practical tools to create the brain change so that you end the thinking patterns that are causing your suffering. And then what happened was once people were able to do that, they had so much more time, so much more mental energy, creativity, inspiration that their businesses exploded. And I was able to go in and help them with the business strategy, the tactics, and the tools. So that was my kind of parlay into, doing the work I do today, which is, very practical, powerful mindset and also the business strategy. And I want to just say one thing, because if there's a banner that I take up around personal development and mindset and spirituality, it's this, like what I experienced over my decade-long journey, looking for a way to end my suffering and looking for a way to become a powerful creator. I would go out, I'd do these seminars, I'd read these books, I'd watch these videos, I'd take these trainings, I'd hire these coaches. And there are great teachers out there. And there were incremental changes in my life. Incrementally, I evolved. But I never had the quantum leap that I was looking for. And what I realized, and I realized this today, and it's something I talk about a lot, is that I would say that the vast majority, just to give a statistic, let's say 95% of personal development or transformation or spirituality today is actually just a conversation about it. So people are being taught how to have a conversation. They're not actually being taught transformation. They're not actually being taught how to be spiritual and actually live that way. And so I use this metaphor. I say, like, the conversation about transformation is to transformation, like a conversation about sex is to sex, right? They're two completely different things. And I'm very passionate about what we've discovered in terms of how to actually create transformation in your life, which is really about rewiring your brain.
Well, that's awesome.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That you picked. All right, cool. All right, so now I have to go back to the normal questions because that was amazing, and I like flying off the cuff more now. All right. All right. So we've gone from action step. We've gone from your pathway. Most successful people have a daily routine or a ritual, and I know that you're a big proponent of at least having your ducks in a row and knowing what you're going to do and having that work-life balance. Could you just kind of walk everybody through what your daily routine is?
Yeah, so I don't feel like I have a work-life balance. I feel like I've learned I've learned how to end the unintelligent thinking that takes place around being a hustling entrepreneur, right? So, like, if you looked at my schedule right now, it probably looks similar to whatever, like, God's schedule was for the Big Bang, right? It's like there's pieces flying everywhere,
Yeah.
but I'm able to, and my team and I, my partner and I, were able to create because you can be really busy with lots of things going on and not get stuck in the overwhelm, the anxiety, and the stress.
Sure.
To me, that's the biggest thing. And that comes down to not just a morning routine, but a moment-by-moment routine of really being aware of what you're thinking and seeing it. And noticing when you're projecting into the future, noticing when you're just becoming self-obsessed. All of these things cause the suffering that's preventing you from actually doing the things you need to do to grow your business. If I was going to look at something in the morning, I do have a morning routine. So for me, I get up, I do a meditative practice. It's about 15 to 20 minutes. I take myself through a series of creating mental images, because that's actually changing your brain and changing who you are and changing your life. So I go through a gratitude process. I go through envisioning what I'm accomplishing in my business and in my life. If I need to forgive anyone, I go through a forgiveness process, so I'm not carrying that with me into the day. And then I go through a mindfulness process where I'm not actually creating any mental images. I'm just being present to my thoughts and observing them, both as a practice and because sometimes I'll start to notice some unintelligent thinking that's taking place that needs to be dealt with if I'm going to be effective when I go into my day.
Now, when you say unintelligent thinking, are you saying more along the lines of just stressing about things that, you have no control over anyways, or it's just temporary and it's going to change, or what? Be a little bit more specific if you would.
So I think this is one of the most profound wisdoms that I've identified, and it was really taking different pieces and creating this wisdom. And I think it's a cornerstone of our work. And at first glance, people always say, well, can you show me really what you mean? But the truth or the wisdom is this, that when you're thinking something that doesn't feel good, it's not true.
Okay.
And I've run that up against every possible test with every client and every person that I've ever run into. And when we actually work a very simple process we see that that's true. So what's happened is you've been given an emotional guidance system that's designed to move into a suffering state when you're thinking something that's unintelligent.
Got it.
So the moment you move into stress, instead of then trying to create from stress, your job is to start to look at your thinking and see the unintelligent thinking, because the moment you see that your thinking is actually unintelligent, you become free from it.
Right.
So that's what I mean by unintelligent thinking. Any thinking that is actually creating some form of a suffering state.
I love it. Okay. So, and that actually leads us right into that next question of what's the number one thing that will prevent burnout in a startup? I mean, it's right there.
Yeah, like I hate to sound like a broken record,
No, you said it. Absolutely.
But we make it a lot more complex than it is. The challenge is that most people were never taught about thinking or thoughts or the brain or the mind. Most people were never taught at all about how their human being operating system works. And so the challenge is that it's easy to say, right? Like, notice your thinking, notice when it's unintelligent, and move back into some form of a beautiful state. But it's a practice that needs to be developed through learning by someone who can teach you that. And when you do that, I was on a webinar the other night, and one of the people on the webinar asked a question. He goes, Dave, if I apply all this mindset stuff and my business doesn't grow, then what? And my answer was, you'll be happy. Because we forget about that, right? It's like, well, if I can just get my business here, then I'll be happy. It's like, no, you can actually learn to be happy, right? It's a practice. And the beautiful thing is, number one, you're happy.
Right.
And number two is that from a happy state, you can create whatever you want.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh, David, I'm so glad you came on here.
So glad I showed up and I was invited.
No, it's good. It's all right. So if you could tell our viewers to do one thing that will grow their business, which is very similar to the question earlier, but it came through a lot. So we're just going to revisit.
Yeah.
If you could tell our viewers one thing to do to grow their business that maybe you made a couple of mistakes along the way, what would it be?
Don't worry about the how. So, and it sounds cliche, but you need to have a vision and you need to make decisions about what you will create. Because the extraordinary thing about the technology between your ears is that when you have a vision, when you create mental images, or when you make a decision and you unconsciously create mental images, you actually start to build new neural pathways in your brain. So what happens is you've tricked the brain into thinking that something that hasn't existed yet has actually happened. So your brain actually experiences the outcome that you want, and it's that shift in your neural networks, it's that brain change that actually gives you the ideas that become the how. But what most people do is they go, I don't know how, so I'm going to wait till I figure it out, and then I'll make a decision that it's going to happen.
Right.
But it's not the way that the technology works. The technology is based on creating images. You're a powerful creator. You get to create these images that become instructions for your brain, and then your brain says to you, here's how we're going to do it.
Great. All right. Well, you've dropped a lot of knowledge so far in 23 minutes.
Yeah.
So later tonight, we're actually going to be sending out a link to an amazing gift, which I've actually been a part of this. I've tested it out myself. So I know that we're going to give the viewers that, but I think we're also, at least for the real-time viewers that are coming in sooner rather than later, you're giving something else too. So can you tell a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah. So I'm not exactly sure what we're doing, so you're going to have to guide me. But I know that we're giving people access to our ebook, which is Mind Hack, and 4 training videos. And those videos actually take people through a lot of the distinctions that you and I really quickly covered.
Yep.
And so anyone who's viewing can do that at mindhackprogram.com. There's an opt-in. You'll get access to the ebook and the training videos.
Yep. And I'll be sending out that link to everybody that's venturing in here as well. So
Perfect.
I'll have access to that. But you have an event coming up in 2 months.
Yeah, we do have an event coming up. And are you going to be sending out a link for that as well?
I will.
Great. Yeah. So we have an event. It's you were asking me what's one thing entrepreneurs can do to like transform their business, and my answer was going to be come to the event. Yeah, we have an event coming up, and so what we believe is that in order to be a powerful creator, to have what we call a powerful living experience, which is essentially having it all, right? Bringing your vision into the world of yourself and your business and your contribution and making an impact and generating the income and having extraordinary relationships, you have to develop mastery in 3 areas. And so those areas are your mindset, the mechanics of your business, and relationship. And so we spend 3 days once a year where entrepreneurs come in from all over the world. We focus on developing mastery in those areas and then making, that year, the year that their business and their lives experiences the quantum growth, the quantum leap that they've been looking for.
That is awesome.
Yeah, I can't wait. It's my favorite time of the year because what happens with people after that event is just business and life changing.
Amazing. And I'll be there. I know that another one of the people that I'm interviewing, April Ayana Zone, is going to be there. We've got some people that we bumped into at Entrepalooza. They're coming. So there's going to be people from all over the globe at this event. So all of you come join me at his event in January. So David, again, thank you so much for being with me here. And
Alex, you're welcome. Thank you.
Yeah. And we will keep in touch. I can't wait to see what else you've got going on.
You got it. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right.